So one of the things I also wanted to talk about today, about have you guys all here, is with IoT coming in, and we've talked about IoT's been around for a long time, but it's also somewhat new, and it's expanding into a lot of different areas, covering a lot of different protocols with a wide variety of different applications, right? And in order to make IoT as successful and as beneficial to humankind as we can, one of the things I think it's really important for us is to get as much perspective and diversity in perspectives as we can. And I know on Twitter recently, there's been a hashtag going around, the women in technology. A lot of people have been offering, books, free training, other things to help support women in their growth in technology. And so one of the things that I was wondering if we could just talk about now is how can we encourage or support, maybe is a better word, how can we support women in the technology field? So let's just go around and see if we get your thoughts on this. Avril, if you don't mind, if we start with you.
So I think yeah. So I'm gonna say something which sometimes, yeah, let me just say it. I'm trying to think of how to say it diplomatically, but just really be blurted out. So I think one of the things to realize in when you're dealing with different genders, and it's even different personality types, but different genders will express themselves differently. And for women, what I found is particularly difficult because women will go, because we're typically, not everybody, and not including myself, I'm not very team building, but a lot of women are very team building orientated. They're very encompassing. They want the group to get there. So they go, I think we should, or I think it works this way, or maybe this. And whenever you say you think, or I believe, it sounds like you're self-doubting, right? And so they often they'll be interpreted, oh, this woman doesn't know what they're talking about. But it's not actually they don't know, they're trying to encompass and not be direct. And when a woman goes, no, you're wrong, and this is how it works, then that can actually be very insulting for some people. And also some people don't respond well when a woman says that to them, right? And so then the woman can be accused of being aggressive, assertive, those kind of negative connotations. And I know it sounds very simplistic, but a lot of it sometimes is just in the language, right? And how we speak, and having one's got to be able to speak. One always says you've got to be sensitive, and I don't want people to be so sensitive they don't say what they're thinking. But at the same time, when I come back and say, well, this is how I found that, I don't want to make it an HR issue. I just want to say this is how it landed on me. Like, for instance, I was in an IoT session about 6 months ago. And it was a bunch of more elderly males that were talking, right, presenting.
Yeah.
And all of their examples were, my wife loses her handbag and she, and I'm like, seriously? You couldn't find your own stupid example. You had to make the female the stupid one, right? That's how it came across to me. And I felt like, wow, if I'd actually called them on it, they may have classified me as a feminist or I don't know, something, whereas I actually would like to have told them and said, hey, can you fix this problem? Because this is an example of how, it's kind of offensive, right? But you hadn't offended me. I was just trying to tell you, but it's hard to have those conversations with people. And that's what I think is sad, is that I think we need to get past that. And we need to be sensitive to the fact that people do communicate differently. And so helping women is great and getting them into it. But until you actually understand that they may know what they're talking about, even if they just say, I think, or I believe, and they may actually know. I'll share one last thing before I stop on my rant. What I found helpful with me and how I've got past this over the years is partly my personality type, as I'm not very sensitive. I will say what I'm thinking and not really care that much how it lands, because I'm more concerned about the project and the product than I am people's feelings, and that's not very nice to say that, but that's just who I am. I wish I was different, but I'm not. But the other thing I do is I just throw the doctorate at them, because the minute I do that, they just assume that I'm intelligent. And also my British accent helps, because they again assume that I'm educated. But I share with you, my doctorate is actually a mechanical engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer, right? And everybody else, I'll just say I'm an engineer, and they just assume electrical because I'm female, right? And it's paid for me. It's been beneficial for me for them to make that assumption, right? So I don't know what your comments are on that, and I hope it wasn't too blunt.
Oh no, that was fantastic. A couple things that stood out to me when you're describing this, your comment about the team-minded mentality, and it made me think of just based on our last call that we had. That's also a very similar. So I've never been in the military, but it seems to be a similar training tactic that they use in the military. That it's all about the team. It's not it's individuals. It's we've got to bring the whole team forward with us. Every person gets out, that kind of thing. But it's the cohesiveness of the team working together as a unit to achieve an objective. And I agree with you about the wording on how sometimes the words that we choose help or can diminish our stance, our position. So some writing examples when an email is often sent where you say something like, "I'm just following up on the last email that I sent," and use that "just" word, it kind of diminishes your position. And so I think that's one of the writing differences that you see between different people, those that use the "just" and those that don't use the "just." And so more assertive or affirming email stance and language, whether it's written or verbal, can make a big difference in this. JD, what are your thoughts on things that you think we can do to encourage more women in technology?
I think one thing to recognize here is that we kind of experience these different communication styles, not just between men and women, but between different cultures, and any of us who've ever spent time on TAC in a different country or something along those lines, we all experience these. And so it's just a matter of kind of incorporating them into the norm, right? Making those adjustments. I'll tell a really brief story. Many years ago, I was in Sweden working on a project with a team, and I was fairly new to the organization and fairly new to this team. And we're working through it's a group of five of us, and I was the only American. There were 3 Swedes, and then there was a French guy in the room, and then there was a Swedish person who was kind of herding us, kind of keeping us on topic and whatnot. And at the end of the first day, I knew I was a little jet lagged and whatnot. But when I was kind of thinking through this in my hotel room before we went out to dinner, I was frustrated because the conversation was just dragging on. It felt like every point we were just kind of like beating into the ground and not actually making a decision on. And I'm like, man, like we should be so much further along than what we actually are. And we all went to dinner, and there was one particular guy I'd kind of had a couple conversations with. Obviously, he liked me as a person. I liked him as a person. And afterwards, he and I kind of walked back to the hotel together. And I said to him, I said, "Magnus," I said, "I don't understand what's going on. Like, why is this part of the culture I don't understand? Like, why are things dragging so much?" And he kind of laughed. And he said, "We actually had a conversation about you." And he said, "We were trying to figure out why you didn't agree with any of the things that we were saying." And I'm like, "What do you mean? I was contributing to the conversation. Of course I was agreeing." And he said, No, you weren't. You weren't actually agreeing." And there was kind of like this aha moment as I'm walking through, downtown Gothenburg's, in Sweden, fully jet lagged and frustrated. Like I was the problem here, right? I didn't think I was the problem, but I was the problem. And what I learned in that moment was that in America, we assume agreement, right? We expect you to speak up if you disagree. And if you're contributing to conversation and you don't disagree, that means you agree. There, at least in that room, in that environment, because I wasn't at the end of the discussion saying I agree, everyone was sitting there awkwardly waiting and trying to understand why I was in disagreement, why I wasn't on board, even though I was making statements that kind of seemed as if I was. And once that aha moment happened, it was the next day, everything moved right along, because I would suddenly realize, okay, we're at that moment. Everyone, there's an awkward silence. And I would literally just say, yeah, I think this is right. I think, whatever. And I would move on. And that was an enlightening moment for me. So it was something really simple. It was literally, it changed nothing about how the conversations went. It changed nothing about what I did or how I felt about the conversations. It was purely a minor adjustment in the way the conversation took place, in the way I communicated my agreement. And I think oftentimes we do that with people all around us for different reasons, and we have to kind of be willing to do that in the workplace with other people, whether that's gender based or life experience based or whatever. We just have to be a little bit more flexible with the communication styles. That went a little longer than I meant, and I apologize. The other thing I'll say too is we have, Avril's a great example of a really strong, intelligent, accomplished woman in technology. But we also have three middle-aged white guys in the room, and what we recognize is that most of our conferences we go to, we are the majority. So as the majority, I think we have to be at least aware that not everyone has the same experience. Several years ago, I had a really kind of crazy experience at Cisco Live where I left an event for women. It was actually for women that myself and a couple other people attended, because we were there in support of one of the women who were speaking. And Denise Fishburne, anybody that knows her, fantastic person, love her to death. She was there speaking, and super intelligent. Some of the most highly rated sessions at Cisco Live. Was one of the people we were there, was the person we were there to support. And as we were walking out, it was a large cluster of women, and I heard two engineers say to them, they were kind of talking about, well, where's all these people coming from? And one of them said, "Oh, that's the Cisco skirts." And it was one of those things where it literally just stopped me in my tracks, because I just sat through the session where I'm hearing women talk about their experiences in technology, and I was kind of scratching my head going, is it really that hard? Like, is it really that difficult for some women in technology, especially when they're this accomplished and this industry leaders, right? And then literally it was just kind of shoved in my face, 5 minutes out, outside the door. And that kind of gave me a gut check. And so what I realized is as the majority, we really do have a little bit of responsibility to ensure that we are, we're looking out for the greater community, right? And again, whether that's gender or race or whatever, that we are looking out for that community and ensuring that we are supporting and encouraging, just a bunch of smart, strong engineers, no matter what that person looks like. Occasionally you'll see me, and you'll see many others at conferences on the first day wearing kilts. We jokingly call it Kilted Monday, or we call it Kilted Monday, even though it's the first day of the conference. That may be a Friday. We don't care. And that is ultimately about reminding ourselves and that not everyone shows up feeling normal in the group. And the only time I wear a kilt is for Kilted Monday. And I got to tell you, putting a kilt on, even though I've got Scottish heritage and fully embrace what a kilt is, putting a kilt on and walking into a conference on the first day is weird. And it's a really good reminder that not everyone walks into that conference the first day surrounded by people they know and friends and feeling fully comfortable in those environments. And so whatever we can do as individuals to remember firsthand and first person that not everyone has that really open experience that we do, I think is going to be beneficial for everyone.
I think that's. I think it's a neat idea, the Kilted Monday, and I too have participated in that, and I think it's an interesting thing, and it does generate some interesting reactions, and helps kind of put you in the shoes of other people that may feel certain levels of discomfort. Sorry, Avril, I'll cut you off.
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on JD's culture comment. I spent a couple of years working in China, and I was in this meeting with the the Ministry of it was effectively MIT and technology, and Huawei was there, ZTE was there, all the high tech companies were there, and we were having an engineering conversation, and practically everybody was a woman, and I was like. And I kind of thought, am I in the wrong place? I mean, we were having this conversation. Even I had the biases, right? I was like, this was so unusual for me. And I leant across to somebody and I said, I have to ask you. I said, everybody here is a woman. And they said, oh, yes, in China, electrical engineering is considered effeminate. Real men do mechanical engineering. They don't do electrical. That's women's work. And so I was like, wow. I was like shocked and I was just flabbergasted. I mean, I cannot tell you how surprised I was.
Yeah, it's a bit of a different perspective there too.
It is. So there's absolutely no reason why women aren't leading in our field. Absolutely no reason whatsoever, right? Yeah. It's just a matter of it's just, and I understand why they're giving them education is because when there's a barrier, you want to do things that are easier, right? That are comfortable. Who wants to put themselves in an uncomfortable situation? And in China, it was uncomfortable for a man to do electrical engineering because that made them feel effeminate. So yeah, so it can happen in reverse.
Yeah, that's you bring up a couple of interesting points there. And so at first, I just wanted to just tell a story of there's a comedian, I think is where I first heard this, but he asked the question is, should there be equal rights for everybody? Should everyone be treated equally? Right. So that's one of the other first questions he asked. Then he asked, should people get equal pay for equal work? Right. Should everyone have the right to vote? Right. So some simple, relatively simple questions like that. And if you agree with all those, if you think that everyone should be equal and all that, then by definition, you're a feminist, because that's how words work. Feminism describes equality for everybody. Right. So if you agree to those, then by definition, you're a feminist because of how we've defined the word. But you also mentioned, Avril, about being in a situation where you felt a little bit uncomfortable, and why would anybody want to be in a situation where they felt uncomfortable? Right. And so one of the things I've wondered about, like I don't think there's a problem with women getting excited about technology or wanting to go into that field. I don't think that's the problem at all. It's more of a challenge of keeping them there, right? And one of the things that I've kind of wondered about is if they're not comfortable, why would they stay in that? Right? And so if we flip the table, and maybe the question isn't how do we encourage women to get into IoT and technologies? How do we make them comfortable in it? What do we need to change to eliminate that uncomfortableness, right? And basically, it's, I think men need to change, right? And so I wanted to tie that back to something that you said, JD, about when you walked out of that session with Denise Fishborn, and they made the comment about the skirts, and you mentioned you just came out of that conversation, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. And we can drive conversation from this. But when you heard that, what did you do?
So I didn't approach them, if that's what you're asking. It was kind of one of those things where, it was so shocking. Like I was kind of left almost dumbfounded. I think is kind of the way I want to describe it. I would say the first time I kind of wore a kilt to Cisco Live, in fact, the very next year, it was kind of it was kind of an in your face thing, right? It was kind of a ask me about my skirt, type of response. It was, still at that moment, right? That was kind of a year later. That was kind of the mindset that I went into wearing that. And there were three of us that wore kilts the very first time. And I really had not even talked with them about why. It was just kind of something that we kind of threw together on Twitter last minute. I literally had the kilt delivered to the hotel. but it was absolutely with this mindset of yeah, ask me about my kilt or ask me about my skirt, you know. And maybe partly because I didn't say anything in that moment, because I didn't address it. But then, you know, there was this undeniable uncomfortableness that occurred, you know, in myself as I'm walking around in it. And even like literally, you know, the moment I stepped out of my hotel room, I felt different. And get in the hotel or got into the lobby, and people are looking at my badge, and they're looking, you know, they have badges on, and they're looking at the kilt, and they're almost uncomfortable, you know. And it was really kind of you know, what is going on here? And, you know, and it probably took until about the next year, when it, you know, came around, well, a little bit before the next year, for me to fully process kind of what had happened and what I was feeling, and how that changed things. Because I got really lucky. I was on Twitter really early from a you know, like tech Twitter perspective, and interacted with a whole lot of people. So my very first experience at Cisco Live, all I was doing was meeting people in person that I had been talking to for years, you know, on Twitter. And so I pretty much walked into this conference day one, and within 15 minutes knew people. And it was like meeting with friends. And so I've always felt very comfortable at all of the conferences I've gone to. You know, I've just been very lucky in that regard. And it is kind of this gathering of friends when we go there. And so it was a real challenge for me. So ultimately, to get to your question, it was, I think in that moment I didn't say anything to them, and I think really Kilted Monday started as a kind of you know, a finger in their face, you know, I guess maybe, and then ended up transitioned into this more of an introspective thing.
How did you cope with the escalators?
I
have to ask.
Right. Yeah. That. You know, the other thing too is that's quite funny. I hang out with a fun group of people at a lot of these conferences, and they're pretty open, and they're you know, I mean, Denise is one of those people, right? Mm-hmm. And Denise really got on board with Kilted Monday. So it's funny how much of that group has kind of embraced Kilted Monday, and still it is a little bit of a challenge walking out of the hotel room, you know, walking towards that conference each day, or that first day, I should say. But yeah, it changes everything about that day while you're wearing the kilt from a guy's perspective. Going to the bathroom, you know, yes, definitely the escalators or how you sit. You know, it and I think that reinforces that perspective of a lot of people have a very different experience in you know, surrounded by a group of conference attendees.
So this is fantastic conversation, everybody. I want to bring in a different perspective. If we don't encourage women to come in, we're going to miss out on an awful lot. Let's just mention that Hedy Lamarr, or the actress who invented things, no, the engineer who just happened to be an actress. Wi-Fi, as we know it today, coming from the frequency Hopper spread spectrum, was invented by Hedy Lamarr, right? But what if she decided, oh no, I'm not going to bother to do this engineering, I'm just going to be an actress instead? And I think that you have to be strong as a woman, especially, to start. But once it starts, then more and more people can do it. And Avril, you know, I think you're a trailblazer here, right? And I thought it was wonderful when you said they don't know who I am, they don't respect me till I drop the doctorate on the table, and all of it. That changes because it's your proof, and it's a terrible thing that you have to prove it, right? Mm. But when you put the doctorate on the table, then they start listening to you. And I think we have to adapt and change, and we have to get people, all different types of people, into IoT and into Wi-Fi, and it will make it better. And I think that maybe, I'm not saying we start in the conversation here, but we continue in the conversation. And I think everybody needs to go away and think about this and not judge people by any requirements at all, and accept people for what they are and see what they can bring to the table and bring to the technology and make Wi-Fi and IoT better. And I think that's a great thing I think we can do. And it's actually quite sad that we have to have a conversation about why don't women do this? And I think it's wonderful that you said, in China, it's a different opinion. And, China has some of the most advanced technologies going at the moment. So the women are doing something right, Avril, right?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all equal. Physically, I mean, there are some physical differences, but physically, we can all think the same way. We can still invent, we can construct, we can build teams, we can build products. We can all do it, and we all have our individual strengths. And it all comes. I like the fact they're giving away free education, because I think it all starts with education, and then it just starts with understanding and opportunity. But yeah, I think it's fantastic.
I'll add one more thing to that. If you are a woman in technology and you're unhappy, reach out to me. Just send me an email, and I'll try and help you find a better group of people that you can hang out with. Right, JD? Because if you're having trouble, you're hanging out with the wrong people. Absolutely. And at the WLA, at WLPC, we try and change that. We try and make it so everybody's welcome and we include people. So seriously, if you're not having fun doing technology as a woman, change the people you hang out with, change your job. Yeah. Try a different job, because it shouldn't be that way.
Or even if you're a man that has some sensitivities, that's finding it hard.
Absolutely.
Same thing, right?
Well, and not just women. Yes, absolutely. If you have an issue and you're not having fun in technology, reach out to us, reach out to me, and make a change. You've got to be strong and stick with it, because there's always a trailblazer is the first one that does it. Then it becomes the norm. And going back to Hedy Lamar's situation, she was around in the 1940s. Hollywood in the 1940s they didn't want you to be intelligent. That wasn't the way it worked back then. And if you stick with it, you will reap the benefits. How about that for a summary?
Yeah.
And so I guess if you're a man and if you're feeling sensitive when a woman tells you that you're wrong, feel free to email me and I'll help explain that you're also wrong.
There comes a point when if enough people tell you that you're wrong, you got to stop being offended by it and actually sit back and think, you know what, I may be wrong here. That's a great point, Troy. Yeah.
I was just, it was Avril's point.
Well, the one constant we have in technology is change, right? Everything is changing, and you can fight it and end up being a Luddite, or you can embrace it and make the world a better place and make some money out of it. It's your choice. If the world is going a direction, let me change my thought there. And I always talk about the iPhone, right? How did we manage before the iPhone came out? How did we survive? How did I find out what the weather was, or what the time was, or what the journey to work is going to be like? Now that the iPhone has arrived, we've adapted, and it's the iPhone and Android, of course. These systems are now part of our lives, and like I don't know my kids' phone number, right? I don't know their numbers anymore. If I lost my iPhone, I'm sure I'm going to be stranded because I don't know who to call because I don't know anybody's telephone number. And our world has changed because of the iPhone. Our world is going to change because of IoT. And the more people of whatever gender or culture we can get in making the world a better place, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, so I think there's lots of opportunity for us in IoT, both on the enterprise and in the home space. And there's just to wrap us up from our conversation